And hey, everybody, thanks for joining us on our ongoing coverage with Hurricane Sally. My name is Leslie Hudson. I'm the Chief Meteorologist here at My Radar. Our time now is 6:31 Eastern Time, 5:31 p.m. Central Time. A lot of folks along the Gulf Coast nervous tonight as Hurricane Sally gets closer and closer to the Gulf Coast, moving pretty slowly at about 5 or 6 miles an hour, but did some pretty explosive things today, rapidly intensifying into a Category 2 hurricane. And there's some room for more, you guys. We could even see this become a major hurricane before landfall, which should be sometime tomorrow. So all of that has to still play out. Of course, Sally didn't move a whole lot today, and also the center restructured and recentered away from what was initially forecast. So that always starts with a clean slate with the hurricane center in their path, and they have subsequently adjusted that path more towards the east as of 5 p.m. today to take into account for that restructuring and that repositioning of the center of circulation. So we're going to get into all of that. First things first, though, let's take a look at the My Radar app first. A couple of things you guys can do to track along with us, and we've been trying to show you some of the features that we think will help you, especially if you live along this region or if you just have interest in what's going on. So Damien, if you'll take the app full screen, I'm going to kind of zoomed in here and talk about what's going on. So what you currently see is, of course, our high definition radar and the wind layers. So you can clearly see the center of circulation in the center of the screen. You also can see there is a lot of moisture pulling around the outer rotation of Sally, which again is looking better and better organized. As I pull out just a bit here, you can see a lot of that rain is on the northeast side, through the Florida Panhandle, across the Gulf Coast, and even across the broader circulation. There has been ongoing rain across the Florida State Peninsula, where they have had a lot of rain. You may have heard that the Florida Keys got about 10 inches of rain over the weekend. Now, as I zoom in here, I'm going to kind of pull things up, and you can again see the center that's right over our legend there at the bottom, and then look at the lines of equal pressure there and equal winds rather that are circulating around that center of circulation. So we still have a good 24 hours or so before we're going to be talking about a potential landfall here, and so that's why there's a little bit more room for this to actually intensify. So let me take off the winds, and I'm going to put on our hurricane tracker because I wanted you guys to see this. And now this is an upgrade, but I just wanted to show it to you because it does show you the times and the estimated time of landfall as a Category 2, but right on the cusp, you guys, as a Category 2 or a Category 3. And I do think there is certainly opportunity for this to get to that Category 3 status. We're only talking about one more mile and uptick here. So again, the potential there for sure, whether this comes in as a strong 2 or a weak 3 or maybe even a strong 3 has yet to be played out. But as I zoom out here, you can see that over the next 24 hours, it's kind of a slow, rugged pace because there's not a lot of clear defining steering currents. And then as we get into the second half of the forecast, things really pick up as a cold front comes into play and quickly moves Sally off towards the northeast. So that's going to be the big telling feature as we head through the rest of the week, which will be a big event for the southeastern United States. So Damien, let's go back to WSI if you don't mind, and we'll take a look at the live sweeping radar. I've got 5 radar sites up along the Gulf Coast, including the Florida Panhandle, through parts of southern Alabama, southern Georgia, Louisiana, and again, heavy rains, of course, still just right now on the verge of moving inland, and these also are going to be packing in some wind. So this area of the country, in particular the Gulf Coast, will start to feel those tropical storm gusts. They're already in their neighborhood of 20 miles an hour or so, but that's going to pick up exponentially as we get into tonight and of course tomorrow once the actual center gets a little bit closer. Let me move my app back here because I don't want to damage it. And let me real quick, and I apologize, let me just turn from you guys real quick because I want to pop up the chat. If there's any chat going on, you guys can ask away about questions about the cyclone. And bear with me one second. There we go. I want to get that up and going. Okay, so what we're dealing with again is these moderate to heavy rains right now, and then as we get through tonight, you can see the center still is about 100 miles away from the coast. So again, right in here, but some of these bands that are already going to be impacting the Florida Panhandle through southern Alabama into southern Georgia, back into Louisiana, those winds are going to start to pick up to tropical storm strength pretty quickly. Now, those strong winds, those 100-mile-per-hour winds, are down here, of course, but as that center center comes closer, obviously those winds are going to pick up. The big question is, when are we going to see a turn in Sally? And that's going to dictate who gets the brunt of this. Now, I still think we're going to see some shifts here from the Hurricane Center's official forecast. And the reason why is this trough of low pressure. I'm going to show it to you in just a second, but wanted to show you the rotation, the loop of the heavy storms that again have been affecting this area. And really, it's a kind of ironic, because Friday of last week I talked about the Florida Panhandle and how one model was picking up on 10 inches of rain. And you may, if you were watching on Friday, you may have heard me talk about that I wasn't so sure that was going to happen, but it's really telling how good the Euro model is doing a good job on picking up on this, because I think that's actually back on the table. I think 10 to 11, maybe even a foot of rain could be possible, because Sally is not going to move as quickly in the short-term forecast. It's later in the forecast when it picks up its forward speed, and that's going to really allow for some potentially really heavy high rain totals before it gets picked up by that front and accelerates it more towards the north and the east. So let me drag this up into the velocity up here. I just wanted to see if there was anything, and not quite yet. It's going to be more like tomorrow, where we're going to start to see some more rotation, I think, with some of these outer bands, which will be interacting. Remember, the whole circulation of Sally is obviously rotating counterclockwise, and then as it interacts with land, it gets friction. We've already got rotating storms, and that friction with the land can often create brief spin-ups in tornadoes, and we could see that probably tomorrow. We certainly saw that with Laura. We saw that with Isaias. We've seen that with all kinds of landfalling systems. That's not unusual, but nothing going on today as I scan around here real quick. I just wanted to take a quick look-see and see what's going on in terms of rotation, but it just will go to show you again how much of this is going to be changing. I see a little bit, some weak couplets down here in the boot of Louisiana, but nothing. The radar there is kind of in the outer outskirts, so it may not be picking up really a good, clear rotation. But as I zoom back over here and we head back over towards the Florida Panhandle and the Mobile Bay, again, this will all get more active, and the potential for those severe storms and those isolated tornadoes will become a real threat tomorrow, and I think tomorrow night and even into Wednesday. I think we're going to be talking about that threat through Wednesday because of the slow moving nature of Sally, at least for these first couple of days. So here's a look at the visible presentation, and of course we're losing sunlight. It's 6:38 here Eastern time, so I want you to focus on those first couple of images, and actually I'll stop it here and you can take a look. Hang on one sec. Well, it doesn't want to seem to stop for me. But anyway, some of the interesting features that you can see when you're talking about a tropical cyclone, depression, a storm, or in this case a hurricane, we're looking for that center, and of course we're looking for some type of banding features and some type of well-defined center. So when we get a broader picture here, let me see if it'll stop here in a second. I think it's got to go through its loop. Okay, nope, it's not going to stop. So let me get to the infrared imagery, because I know I can show it on that. So we oftentimes are looking for what's called a vertically stacked center, which would indicate a healthier, a more mature tropical back towards the left or back towards the west. See those big black and red, those big deep red and black hues there? That indicates, of course, some really high cloud tops and some intense banding features. However, you notice it's not going all the way around the center. So it looked, I will say, Sally looked really impressive earlier today, but we're still seeing some entrainment here. You can see that there's not those black concentrated around that center of circulation. We have some banding, we have some feeder bands down here rather, and there are some banding features out here. But I will say it did look a little more organized earlier. There is likely going to be some disruption of that core, but it's still a little bit too early to say that that's going to be how this all plays out, because we're already talking about a very strong Category 2, possibly weak Category 3 before landfall. So all bets are off on what Sally is going to wind up doing ultimately, because it has been a system that's been really tricky to forecast, and the intensity track has also been equally tricky. But right now, sustained winds are 100 miles an hour, moving towards the west-northwest at 6. So again, that slower pace allows more time over those warm Gulf waters. Sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico around 87 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. I use the analogy of imagine yourself inhaling a big deep breath of air, and then exhaling and expelling that air out of your lungs. That's kind of how a hurricane or a tropical cyclone does it. It ingests all of this energy that it gathers from the Atlantic, or in this case, the Gulf of Mexico, ingests the energy, uses that energy to build higher and more potent thunderstorms, and then it exhales or releases that energy through the top of the sun. You look at this imagery here, see that big burst of convection earlier today, and then over these last couple of imageries, it kind of deflated a little bit. That's because it's interacting with the state of Florida and also the Gulf Coast. But again, the official path from the Hurricane Center, which was nudged back towards the right, back towards Florida today as of 5 p.m. And the Hurricane Center even leaves trough. The timing of the trough will determine how much of a turn we're talking back towards the right or back towards the east. So again, folks that are along the southeast, it's looking much better for Texas. It's looking much better for most of Louisiana. However, Louisiana is not out of the woods. It is not looking good for Mississippi, not looking good for Alabama. There's that window of opportunity where we could see that strike in that cone that as we get closer to land. Surge with Laura. Now, Laura was a different scenario. It was strong Category 4. We're talking about a high in 2, maybe a low 3, but still that produces significant damage. And this area, remember, has already been battered by several hurricanes over the last couple of years. So there is already weakened infrastructure. There's already several areas in this part of the country that is still building from Hurricane Michael a couple of years ago. So, even though we're not expecting that type of scenario, it's still just bad news all around for this area because there has been so much tropical activity across the northern Gulf Coast these last couple of years. So the warnings now pretty much are from central Louisiana eastward over to the Florida-Georgia line, and then you can see a tropical storm warning that's issued through the Florida Panhandle. And the Hurricane Center likely will not change this all that much between now and tomorrow. Once we get in this window of 24 to 36 hours, they really do a spectacular job of really honing in on direct local impacts. And now is the time that if your emergency officials are saying it's time to evacuate, you need to listen to those evacuation calls, because as I mentioned, that path was a little further back towards Louisiana and Texas earlier today, and certainly over the weekend. So now we've seen a shift. We've seen a shift towards the east, back towards Florida, the Florida Panhandle. So that's why folks in this region, again, need to be vigilant and be prepared to have to act quickly in the event that we're talking about a landfalling system that was not originally in the crosshairs earlier this past weekend. So rainfall totals, look at this. I just pulled this down from the WPC, the Weather Prediction Center, up to 12 inches. You can see through Mobile Bay, through southern parts of Alabama, southern Mississippi, the Biloxi, Pascagoula area could get up to 10 to 12 inches in some pockets. And then we're talking up to 5 to 7 in parts of central Alabama, and even over into northern Georgia, we could see 5 to 7 inches, 3 to 5 there on the left or right of it, in that area shaded in the purples and blues. So definitely an area that's going to be doing a lot of preps. I know folks are trying to get sandbags. They're trying to get their homes prepped. I know there are folks trying to evacuate because, again, that shift in the path as of 5 o'clock today kind of caught a lot of people off guard. I know that live in this area that thought they're going to be okay, and now we're talking about potentially more of a hook back towards the right than originally forecast a couple of days ago. There's a look at the latest runs from the computer models, and remember, the hurricane hunters are inside, constantly inside, Sally, sampling the atmosphere. I've got some recon data I'm going to show you here in just a second, but again, you can just look at the mess there. There's such a discrepancy in some of these benchmark hurricane models that really typically do a very good job of diagnosing where these storms are going to go based on trends in the atmosphere, based on that trough I'm talking about, based on the ridge of high pressure that's over the Atlantic and across the southeastern U.S. But the modeling here, because the steering currents are weak, they're not strong, that the computer models are only as good as the data that they get. So if the atmosphere itself is not looking solid and the forecast is not an easy one, and it's a tricky one like this one has been, the models definitely reflect that uncertainty, and as you can see, that's definitely been the case. So here's a look at, so we've got the two Hurricane Hunter aircraft, the Air Force and NOAA, that the P3 that were up there and are currently flying in it right now. So the winds with this particular pass, and again, the winds are sustained at 100 miles an hour, but in this particular one, one of the flight level winds was at 64 miles an hour. The other one was at 66. We know the winds are holding at 100, but they just started this recon mission, so they're going to do multiple passes between now and the next, you say, hour or so. Usually the missions take anywhere from, depending on how far they have to fly. They don't have to fly far because they're flying from Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi. But typically they have to, they'll stay inside the cyclones for about an hour or so once they do multiple passes. So we should get some updated information here between now, and I'm going to try and do another update here around 8 o'clock. So, okay, so let's talk about the water vapor, because this is, again, something that we use an awful lot when we're talking about cyclones and steering currents. I'm going to use a couple of different arrows here. So we've got our trough, and first of all, the orange that you see out west across the Baja is a bunch of dry air. Ahead of it is this trough that's kind of in this presentation. And then we also have our ridge of high pressure. There's kind of one squeezing in here between Paulette and you can kind of see it right here. We've also got a little bit of an impulse just off the southeastern coast whoops, I didn't do that right. Well, anyway, there's one just off the southeast coast of I'm gonna probably have to delete that and start over. Hang on one second. Okay, we'll start over. Let me do the trough out west first, and then let's try. Here is our Bermuda High, which is a big steering component this time of the year. And then there's also, we've got a little bit of a ridge over in here that's also kind of steering the patterns. But the main player in the next 24 hours is going to be this trough right here. And when does it start to push and nudge Sally more towards the north? Because remember, tropical features kind of ride on the express lane, where there's the least amount of resistance. So it's going to avoid that trough, and that trough is going to help push Sally northward. So the question is how far north are we going to get here before we see that turn? And that's why the Hurricane Center shifted the track today. That's why we've seen that shift more towards the east, because again, we saw that it looks like the timing of this may not play out quite as originally forecast. And as you can see, the trough is back here. Let me grab the arrow again. Okay, so our trough is back here, Sally right here. And of course, this is another area of low pressure that's disorganized. The Hurricane Center is watching that, but when we look at here on the water vapor in particular, you can see how disorganized this is. This is from the upper levels of the atmosphere, but still not looking anywhere near like we've got a hurricane over here. But we're keeping an eye on this guy too that's over near southern Texas and Mexico. But again, in terms of the timing and the turn, it's going to depend when this front and this trough comes down, digs down into the atmosphere, and will help pull Sally north, and then eventually back towards the northeast. So that's going to be the $64,000 question here. When does that happen? And just how much of a turn is it going to be? How dramatic of a turn are we talking about? Because all of those will ultimately determine who's going to get the worst from this hurricane between now and tomorrow night. So stay tuned to this forecast for sure, because we've already seen a fair amount of changes from the Hurricane Center, at least nuances in the forecast, because again, the rapid intensification of Sally throws those models off, and so did the fact that it restructured and reformed. Again, it's going to take another couple of runs before we get some solid data, I think, and it's probably sometime tomorrow morning before we start to see some real good data coming out of these models in terms of really fine-tuning that forecast. But I do have a model I'm going to show you here in just a second. So this is actual real-time live radar and live satellite imagery. The last image there is the most up-to-date image we have from 6:30 p.m., but it went back the last 24 hours. So you could kind of see the genesis. Let me back it up. I'm going to scrub it by my own. So remember, there it was over Florida over this weekend. Caused a lot of rain there across the southern tip of the state through the Keys, came in to the Gulf of Mexico, and really started to inundate heavy rains across the central and extreme western sides of the state. And then today got a big burst of convection, got into that rapid intensification mode, the weakest link of forecasting. We always talk about that. It's really hard for areas for the Hurricane Center to forecast that. I'm assuming we're still up live, because I see Damien doing his magic in the background there, but I see him doing a lot of quick button pushing. So Damien, if I'm not live, tell me, but I think I am. I see it on YouTube. So if something funky is going on, let me know. But anyway, so there is up to current time. And as I head into this next frame, you can see a little bit more what I'm talking about with this computer model, so that you'll see that there in blue is the official path from the National Hurricane Center. And then I'm going to put this forward in time. This is the Euro model. Again, one of the models that generally does a good job of forecasting hurricanes, in particular precip, in terms of storm forecast, does a pretty good job. Now watch as we head into tomorrow, we kind of see that little jog back towards our company owner just chimed in. Andy, thank you, telling me all is good. So I appreciate someone letting me know, because Damien's at all the way in the other side of the office over there, so I can't directly talk to him. So Andy, thanks for letting me know that all is good. So this particular product, again, overlays the official path from the Hurricane Center and the Euro model. So notice there how there's a little bit of a deviation to the right from the official path. Notice here's the center and here's the official path. Again, this is model guidance. Don't think, okay, she said it's gonna go to the right, it's gonna go towards Panama City. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is this does indicate that there has been, again, some conflicts in the model runs, because anytime a tropical cyclone reforms, especially so close to land like Sally did, it really is very, very tricky forecast in terms of timing. And you can see this is a fairly dramatic right hook here back towards the east. So the cold front's expected to be pretty powerful and pick it up and move it quickly towards the east. But I wanted you to notice that this this particular model, the Euro, runs to the right of the official path of the Hurricane Center. Again, guidance, I could do this tonight at 11 and it could show it right on top of the Hurricane Center, so don't take this to the bank. But I do want you to see that there is some possibilities that we could see, again, more jogs to the right. And the Hurricane Center does talk about that. So I do think that's possible for sure, especially when we're talking about timing of cold fronts and troughs of low pressure and picking up this system and moving it back towards the east. So here is another model run of rain. And this is the run. This, again, the European model does a great job. The GFS, or the two benchmarks that you hear so much on social media, we use this because they have a really good track record of being accurate. So this is, actually, I think I'm using this as the HER model. I take that back. I think this is not the Euro. This one is the HER. This is a high resolution HRR model that is showing this particular preset, but the Euro wasn't far off from this. So notice those rain totals, anywhere from 8 to 9 to 12 inches of rain. So that is a different scenario from Laura, in that we're talking about a slower landfalling, moving system. Laura made landfall as a strong category 4 and moved relatively quickly. At least once Sally makes landfall, there's a lot of thinking that it's going to be relatively slow. So the movement 5, 6, 7 miles an hour, that is enough time to really put down significant rain before it picks back up. And we always tell you guys, the winds are always the thing that makes the headlines. That's what everybody wants to know, because that shows the most dramatic video afterwards. After a landfall, people want to see the storm surge impacts. People are interested in seeing the wind damage. But the number one killer from a hurricane and a landfalling tropical cyclone is fresh water. It's the storm surge, and it is this inundation, this flooding, that catches so many people off guard. So I want you guys that live in this area to be ready. And if you were told to evacuate in this area, please take it seriously, because I do think this is going to be producing a lot more rain than we saw from Laura and we've seen so far this tropical season. Okay, quick look at the Atlantic Basin. There are 5 systems we're tracking. We have not seen this level of activity since the 1970s, 1971 to be exact. So it is definitely a record-breaking, on track for a record-breaking season, where we've seen this many named storms simultaneously. And there they are. Even though Renee is all but done, there's just a little bit left over of Renee, we still have 5 systems that we're tracking. And then we also have 2 areas of interest we're also tracking. One that's just now coming off the coast of Africa, and the one that I talked about that's over along the Western Caribbean. The Western Gulf of Mexico, that we're also watching. So super, super busy, you guys. It is, I would be surprised, I think, if we don't actually get to the Greek alphabet, because we're almost there now, and we still have another roughly 75 days, give or take, of this hurricane season. So I think we're probably going to get there. I think that's a pretty safe bet. Okay, there's a look at the lower 48. You can already see the flood watches. Let me zoom in here real quick. So the National Weather Service has being preemptive, has flash flood watches already up for this area of the country, anticipating those heavy rains that I was just talking about, expecting to see that, of course, only get worse as we head through tonight, tomorrow, Wednesday, and then we should see some forward speed Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So the Carolinas are probably not going to get big time rain totals like the Gulf Coast and the northern Gulf Coast are going to get. Those are the areas that I'm really concerned with. You're still going to get a lot of rain across the Carolinas. Actually, I don't want that. Let me scoot past this one. But I do think, let me go back to the front, because that's the forecast highs for today, or for tomorrow, which actually we're not interested in at the moment. So let me go back up to the radar. So I do think you're going to get some rain for sure in the Carolinas, a couple of inches, but I don't think you're going to get the numbers that we're talking around across the Gulf Coast. So there's a look at the live radar again. Let me take a quick look here and see what you got some questions. I'm looking at Facebook first. Let me scroll up to the top here. Momo says, I don't know who's on third. You got that right. It is definitely been a hat trick trying to follow all these cyclones this year. Okay, so Christine is saying, just saw Dolphin Island is taking tough seas and waves. Yep, that is for sure been going on. We've got, Damien, I don't think we showed our cameras, or if we did, I can't remember. But let's show we have a couple of cameras in the Panhandle, Florida. So let's show our partners with Surfline. They do such a great job of keeping their cameras up and running during these kind of big weather events. So we are up in the Panhandle here, and we are taking a look at, I believe, Pensacola. We'll take a look in a second here. Panama City. Okay, so you can see for sure that we have got some decent surf kicking up here. Dolphin Island, of course, in Alabama. But that was looking rougher in Panama City. That's Spyglass Drive Surfline camera earlier today. But of course, rough seas only going to get worse. And then we've also got our camera in Pensacola Beach, and looking a little nastier here. But this is all going to be a much better scenario, a worse scenario, I should say, tomorrow, with those seas really building. And then our storm surge is going to be a player for the southeastern part of the state. You know what? And my storm surge map did not play. Let me grab that, because I don't know why that didn't play. I wanted to show that to you. Okay, hang on. Let me make sure that that's up to date. I think it is. But you know what, Damien? Let's go and show that video out of Mobile, because you have that rain video real quick. And here is some of the video from yesterday. This was in Mobile, where there was a bunch of rain coming in ahead of Sally. And of course, that's only going to get worse tonight and as we head in tomorrow. Okay, let's see. Let me keep looking here at Facebook's Kara saying she's so glad she doesn't live in Florida. Yeah, it's been pretty crazy this year, but as a native Floridian, I pretty much love the state. It's hard to beat, but boy, it's been crazy for sure. Momo asking about Teddy. Teddy too far out right now, you guys, to be a concern right now. We're going to kind of keep focused on Sally, keeping an eye on Teddy, of course, and Vicky out there. Let's see. What's the estimate rainfall for Metro Atlanta? Okay, so Metro Atlanta, Jacob is asking that question. Probably, I think, in the neighborhood of 2 inches, 3 inches for the Atlanta area. But remember, Jacob, that's going to ultimately depend on where the turn happens with Sally. So it's a little hard to get specific forecasts for cities like that, this far out. So check back with us tomorrow for sure. I think we'll have a better opportunity to tell you what's going to happen. It really is going to count on that ultimate timing, because if the turn happens later than forecast and it pulls more north, then Atlanta's obviously going to have less of an impact. But if it stays on its current path, I think 2 to 3 inches of rain is certainly possible with some winds packed in there if you got some of those outer bands that rotated on the backside of Sally as it made it onshore. But it will really be able to fine tune those select cities. A lot of folks I know want to know how it's going to impact you. But right now, the immediate concern will be the landfalling cities and surrounding areas with the storm surge. And then after that, we'll have a better look of what's going to be happening. But I think right now, at least on the forecast path, a good 2 to 3 inches of rain is good for the Atlanta area, or I think is reasonable. All right, let me show you the storm surge product, because for some reason that didn't play, and I wanted to show that to you because I do think that this is now in the territory again of 7 to 11 feet. This was upgraded yesterday where we are talking about life-threatening storm surge. Remember that your house from the ground up to your roof is give or take 8 to 10 feet. So if you don't evacuate and you're in the storm surge warning where you see here, you're going to get a storm surge, a wall of water where the Gulf of Mexico is going to come surging into your area anywhere from 7 to 11 feet. And if it comes in during high tide, you have to tack on another 1 to 2 feet potentially on top of that. So extremely dangerous. And it is put in place, these warnings are put in place for a reason, so folks will take the precautions and evacuate, because again, we're talking about a situation that is so potentially dangerous. Okay, I apologize, I want to turn real quick and take a look at YouTube. When will Pensacola be clear of the tropical storm force winds? That is from Charles on YouTube. Charles, that is not going to be a case until sometime on Wednesday on the current forecast path, because remember, it's slowed down and it's going to take it a while to get a little closer towards the coast. I'm going to put on my readers when I do this, you guys, because I'm looking at small screens. And so let's see. I've got another one from Alyssa. Mississippi, not Georgia. Good old Landhouse. Yeah, sometimes when you're talking extemporaneously, you guys got to remember that we don't have scripts, that all of the stuff that we do is ad lib. So sometimes in our eagerness to get information out to you, we may mix up a state or two. I don't think I mixed up a state, but I may have. So I'm pretty sure I got it right, but if I didn't, I apologize. But it's hard to speak perfectly for 20 minutes and not mess up a word or two here and there, especially when you don't have a script in front of you and you're speaking off the top of your head. But thanks for bearing with us. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Seeing if I see another question. Okay, Alyssa asking, the eye is tracking right over my house. I'm not sure where she is, but potentially, yeah, that's going to be not a good scenario. Of course, whoever gets this eye is going to be a strong Cat 2, weak Cat 3. Let's see. Reference Hurricane Florence for any questions about slow-moving cyclones. Well, Florence was a scenario for North Carolina, a huge, huge problem for the Carolinas. Different setup, different features. So, you really don't want to try and compare cyclones too much in terms of comparing, okay, this cyclone brought this cyclone brought that. Florence was a slow-moving hurricane for sure, and it inundated and just flooded out many parts of North Carolina and South Carolina because the steering currents with Florence completely collapsed a couple of years ago and had nowhere to go. And so there was catastrophic life flooding that was ongoing in the Carolinas for weeks. It was heartbreaking to see the video coming out of there. At this point, I don't think that's the kind of scenario we're talking about with Sally, because I think that once this trough picks it up, I think the forward motion is going to pick up, and we're going to start to see some acceleration and some more quicker movement. But I am worried, at least in that short term forecast, once it makes landfall in those immediate 12 to 18, 24 hours, where we could see some big numbers of rain in the Florida Panhandle, southern Alabama, and southern Georgia, southern Mississippi. See, I just did it again. So that is the bigger concern in the immediate forecast. I think by the time it gets to northern Georgia into the Carolinas, it's going to be picking up its forward speed, and we should have less concern for flooding at this point. But remember, that's about 3 days from now, 2.5 to 3 days, and a lot of things can change between now and then. So that we'll have to kind of fine tune that forecast and see how things play out. But another look at the radar, and then we'll take this live down. I just wanted to show you the long arm here of Sally goes all the way, stretches through pretty much the entire length of the state of Florida. You can see that outer rotation, and then as we kind of come in here, you can see some of those outer bands picking up and rotating so close to now the Big Bend area of Florida, through the Florida Panhandle, actually just to the west of the Big Bend, but the Florida Panhandle for sure, through the Mobile Bay area, and then back over to Mississippi. We're starting to see some of those storms fill in, and through Louisiana as well. I will say, as I mentioned earlier, if you just are joining us, at least on satellite presentation, Sally is looking a little less organized tonight and than it did this afternoon. I don't mean that that's getting weaker, but it is starting to interact with land. So when you're talking about structure of hurricanes and their central cores, interaction with land can oftentimes disrupt that core, and we can get some wind shear that's coming in. There is some wind shear that's already playing into this. So, of course, we want a weaker storm than a stronger storm, but I'm not saying that's the case. But I am saying from earlier today where we saw the rapid intensification, that phase looks to be done. And it looks like we're seeing at least a plateau of the strengthening. I hope this lasts. I hope we don't see a secondary burst of intensification. It's the warm waters are ripe there in the Gulf of Mexico. There is some wind shear. It is interacting with some land. So I hope we are done with the rapid intensification phase of this hurricane, but it is still very, very dangerous, and it's still got the opportunity to get even that central core has a little bit more opportunity to get a little stronger before it actually makes landfall. So again, the movement is west to northwest at 6, pretty slow. The winds topped out at 100. By the way, we're going to get an update from the Hurricane Center here within this hour, and we're going to do another update when we get that update. So we'll turn it around and do another update for you here in about an hour when we hear back from them. But there's the path, again, right on the cusp of a Category 3, strong Category 2, and then starting to pick up speed, pick up forward momentum, and hook back towards parts of the southeastern U.S., including the Carolinas. Much weaker, of course, and not going to be nearly what we're talking about right now, but certainly the opportunity there for a lot of rain. Okay, I think that's going to do it for us for now, you guys. It is currently 7:08, I think that says, yes. So I want to thank you guys for joining us for our ongoing coverage. Well, again, I'll have another update here soon when we get some more info from the Hurricane Center, from the NOAA aircraft. We'll come back on here, jump back on in about another hour. And then I want to, hopefully you guys have noticed our live streams. We're showing those in between our live coverage, and that shows the latest path. All of that's coming in from the Hurricane Center, so we have it set up so our system can play a loop of the latest path, the latest coordinates, the latest rain rates, all of that we'll show you in a loop that we run in between our live coverage. So hopefully you guys can check that out as well. All right, that'll do it for now. I want to again thank Damien in the back doing all the magic with our buttons back there, Damien McFarland. My name is Leslie Hudson. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, guys. We'll see you back here in just a little bit. And I hope everyone across the Gulf Coast has a very safe next couple of days.